Yeah, that was me screaming, and there are major benefits to horror when it comes to movies or haunted houses. For many people, a good scare, while frightening at first, can actually help in overcoming fears and traumas. According to Kurt Oakley, a psychotherapist in San Francisco, he says that an audience's surrogate experience with horror is akin to the practice of exposure therapy, wherein a patient is presented with stressors in a controlled environment to reduce their impact over time. This is the same reason why roller coasters are so thrilling, or why those times when you laugh so hard you start crying feels like such a release of emotions. When we do something like going through a haunted house, scientists say our brains release a boost of adrenaline, dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin. That release actually helps sharpen the mind and focus your brain. It creates a feeling of overcoming fear while also creating a natural high, allowing you to smile after such a scary experience. So I decided to put all of this to the test. I got invited to Universal Studios Hollywood for the opening night of Halloween Horror Nights 2022. It features several haunted houses based on classic monster movies, new horror films, and original concepts. I'm thrilled to be back at Universal with access to some of the scariest and most elaborate haunted houses they've ever created. So my name's Josh Taylor, this is Modern Mouse, and today we're heading over to Universal Studios Hollywood for Halloween Horror Nights, overcoming our fears and hopefully showcasing how an evening of frights can be beneficial to your health. Everybody has their own fears. Mine include heights and being in spaces that I don't really know how to get out of. And my friend Chris came along with me, who hosts a bunch of different podcasts along with me, including a theme park show titled Coffee and Carousels. And he told me his biggest fears. Chris, what's your biggest fear?
Being in a building when it collapses. That sounds like a terrible way to go.
We all have something that we're afraid of, whether that's heights or enclosed spaces or whatever Chris said, but we also all have the ability to overcome those fears. What I love about coming to a place like Universal for Halloween Horror Nights is that they have multiple haunted houses or mazes or haunts or whatever you want to call them, each with their own theme, so depending on what your fear is, one can be a walk in the park while others might be a bit more frightening to you. If you've never been to Halloween Horror Nights before, let me just give you some basic info. This is a separate ticketed event from the regular park, and most nights you get around 6 or 7 hours from opening to close. And Halloween Horror Nights usually runs most nights in September and October. The 2022 lineup at Universal Hollywood features 8 distinct houses, several scare zones, and the Terror Tram, so there's plenty to do and to be afraid of. And one particular theme this year is clowns. Coulrophobia, or the fear of clowns, is a major issue with many people. 42% of Americans said that they just don't like clowns, while 8% of people in a study from Chapman University said that they are deathly afraid of clowns. So for this year's Halloween Horror Nights, of course, there's a maze dedicated to the B-movie killer clowns from outer space. In the maze, there's big giant clowns ready to scare you at every turn. This wasn't even the only place clowns were prominent. This year's Terror Tram, a nighttime use of Universal's classic tram tour on the backlot, was themed around a clown overtaking the tour and terrorizing the backlot area. There were other aspects to the tour, like characters from Jordan Peele's films Us and Nope, with great uses too of places like the Bates Motel or the War of the Worlds set, but the overall theme to the entire tour was set around this clown, something that coulrophobes may want to know as they gear up to face their fears. While clowns are never really a problem for me, I was afraid to get stuck somewhere, again, enclosed spaces, and so not being able to get out of a place forced me to run away several times throughout the evening. Another common fear is the fear of the unknown, and I'm sure many of us can relate to that one. Going back to that Chapman University study from 2017, they stated that 20% of people said their biggest fear was death. 20% might seem low, but that doesn't even bring into account the more specific styles of death that people pointed out. And death is very much a part of the unknown. For me, walking into a maze simply titled The Horror Hotel had me worried. I didn't know anything about it. What was inside? What types of things would I face? How long was I going to be in there? Typically, I'm not afraid of a haunted house when I know the theme and understand what to expect. But with something as vague as the horror hotel, my anxiety was catching up to me.
We did it! Oh. Oh.
In all the years that I've been making videos and covering events and being whatever you would consider a journalist is these days, I've never fully gotten over all of my fears. I remember when I first started going to haunted houses, I was always afraid to be the first person in the front of the line, and also to be the last person in that line. And now I can kind of go by myself. And even walking through by myself, I'm still a little bit hesitant in how quickly I walk through spaces. I look behind every corner, or I slowly walk through doorways. I've seen plenty of tricks, monsters hiding behind a corner and gruesome looking props, but still to this day, there are plenty of times where I catch myself having truly fearful moments. I know that I won't be suspended high in the air at Universal, which is definitely my biggest fear, but I do consistently think about how to get in and out of a haunted house, and I've had plenty of instances where I felt trapped because I didn't know where the escape was, or I took a wrong turn and ended up in a place where I wasn't supposed to be. And this year, one of Universal's main attractions at Horror Nights is called the Weeknd's After Hours Nightmare. It's a collaboration with The Weeknd, you know, the guy that did the Super Bowl thing. So I didn't fully know what to expect. This may have been the best maze of the entire evening as far as how well crafted it was, but it also led me to a moment, well... I got stuck in a hall of mirrors, surrounded by images of myself and the Weeknd, who was chasing after me. Of any moment of the night, this was one of the truly terrifying moments for me. So naturally, the only way to cope is with tacos. I've discussed this before, but I'm a big fan of the classic Universal monster movies, the ones that were made in the 1930s and 40s and 50s. Dracula, Frankenstein, The Mummy, etc. So when they announced they'd have a brand new house called Universal Monsters Legends Collide, a haunted house where I'd see the Wolfman, Dracula, and the Mummy all in one place, I knew that it would probably be a favorite of mine. And while I love these characters and am drawn to them, like so many other people, I can't help to think about why we love them so much. According to Professor Leo Brody from the University of Southern California, scary stories have always been around. Since humans have been able to talk, we've been trying to frighten each other with stories of ghosts and monsters. He states that monsters allow us to face our own mortality. Sure, there's a place for someone like Michael Myers, but unfortunately his story of murder is something that we commonly see on the nightly news. But the classic monsters, they're otherworldly. Fiction that feels distant and safe, yet something that can bring out our fears. Werewolves come with this notion of not being able to control ourselves. Dracula definitely fits with that idea around mortality and death, and The Mummy is this idea of religion and the supernatural coming together. Professor Brody states that popular culture is, to a certain extent, emotionally compensatory. It allows us to indulge those fears and desires that medical science has deprived us of by desensitizing or de-emotionalizing death. After spending several hours at Halloween Horror Nights, I was definitely emotionally spent, or de-emotionalized. My friend Chris and I were happy and smiling, and with that chemical release, I can definitely say that I was emotionally spent, but also focused and excited to make this video. It felt like an evening of therapy for me. Whether it's exposure therapy or not, I'll let you decide. In case you haven't watched Pixar's Inside Out 4,000 times like I have, because it's one of the best Pixar movies, and I won't apologize for putting it in my top 5 Pixar movies of all time ever, fear isn't a bad emotion. It's actually something good to have. It helps protect us, and it also makes us healthier, happier, and safer. A visit to Halloween Horror Nights left me in a place where I was excited because I had scientifically triggered a chemical release, which took my regular life, some might say a boring life, and shook it up a bit. Fear drives us to use our own mortality as a way to live life to its fullest. We're only on this earth for a finite amount of time, and fear has told me that I can do more than I think because I'm able to overcome that emotion. I personally love events like Halloween Horror Nights because it gives everyone the ability to overcome their fears in a safe manner. It's a way to take those moments of anxiety and conquer them. Now, I'm not going to say that Halloween Horror Nights is a way for you to overcome serious traumatic events in your life or that it can replace therapy. But there is a form of healing in all of those chemical releases, and Universal inviting me out to cover Halloween Horror Nights once again, thank you so much for inviting me, but it also allowed me to heal myself through horror. Thank you for watching this video. If you want to see more about Universal's Halloween Horror Nights, I covered a video last year talking about the history of Universal and horror. You can also check out my video here about the backlot tram tour at Universal. So there's all kinds of different Universal stuff here. And if you haven't subscribed, please do so. And until next time, my friends, thank you for watching and keep moving forward.